It is now my pleasure and high honor to introduce our speaker for this convocation. Dr. Michael Eric Dyson is one of the nation's most renowned professors, gifted writers, inspiring preachers, and knowledgeable lecturers, and prominent media personalities. With a PhD in religion from Princeton, he has taught at some of the nation's most distinguished universities, including Brown, UNC Chapel Hill, Columbia, DePaul, the University of Pennsylvania, and Georgetown. He is currently Centennial Chair and University Distinguished Professor of African American and Diaspora Studies in the College of Arts and Science, and University Distinguished Professor of Ethics and Society in the Vanderbilt University Divinity School. Dyson is the author of more than 20 books, including 7 New York Times bestsellers, with volumes on Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Tupac, Marvin Gaye, Bill Cosby, and Barack Obama. His New York Times best-selling book, Tears We Cannot Stop, A Sermon to White America, was called by the Times one of the most frank and searing discussions of race, a deeply serious, urgent book, which should take its place in the tradition of Baldwin's The Fire Next Time and King's Why We Can't Wait. The book won the 2018 Southern Prize, and in December 2020, Dyson published the instant national bestseller, Long Time Coming, Reckoning with Race in America, which Robin DiAngelo calls a searing cry for racial justice from one of our nation's greatest thinkers and most compelling prophets. Kirkus Review says it is a sweeping overview of racism in America and a timely, fervent message from an important voice, while NPR says that what makes this an important book is Dyson's voice, which is strong but always pregnant with frustration, pain, admiration, and ultimately hope. As a preacher and sometimes pastor for more than 40 years, Dyson has mounted many of the nation's most noted pulpits to deliver sermons, including most recently the Washington National Cathedral, where Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his last Sunday sermon. Dyson has lectured around the world in many of the best colleges and universities, in public theaters and auditoriums, and for many corporations and unions. For the last 30 years, Dyson has been a media commentator and an occasional host on major radio and television shows, and a political analyst for MSNBC. He has even made guest appearances on scripted television programs such as Soul Food, The Game, and Blackish. Dyson has won 2 NAACP Image Awards and an American Book Award. Last year, he was presented with the Langston Hughes Medal. Feminist author Naomi Wolf calls Dyson the ideal public intellectual of our times. Perhaps Nathan McCall captures it best when he says that Dyson is a street fighter in a suit and tie. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Eric Dyson.
Thank you so very kindly to President Hildreth and to all of the officers and members of this great institution, and to you, my brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, but especially the students of this remarkable and impressive institution of higher education that sends our students on as doctors and dentists and incredibly conscientious healthcare workers who are concerned about our future. When I think about the topic of this convocation, health and wellness, framing the foundations of the future, we realize and recognize that we are in the midst still of a global pandemic. Millions of people around the globe have lost their lives. But what we recognize in America is that we are living through what is termed a syndemic, the convergence of 2 pandemics. On the one hand, the global pandemic of the virus, which has kept us in masks, vaccinated for those of us who will be, making certain that we pay attention to the incredible medicine that has been given to us as a result of the ingenuity of so many doctors and healthcare professionals who are committed to making sure that our bodies are protected. In my case, I received the Moderna vaccination that was pioneered by Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, my dear friend, then at the NIH, now at Harvard University, a young black woman genius, making certain that we are protected from all manner of virus. So we are living through a global pandemic that has besieged the bodies of millions of people around the globe, but especially in America, disproportionately focused on people of color, on Black and Latino brothers and sisters. And when we have pre-existing conditions, when we talk about diabetes, or when we speak about poor health care in regard to heart care, when we talk about heart disease, when we speak about asthma, we think about those pre-existing conditions which render more vulnerable our bodies to the lethal spread of this virus. But there are underlying conditions as well. And those underlying conditions have to do with the economic exigencies and the inequities that people of color, especially black and brown people, face disproportionately. Living in food deserts, living in neighborhoods where the ghetto grocer is stocking high sugar content cereal and mystery meat, paying even more, not only by the pocketbook, but by their health. And then when we think about the systemic underlying conditions, controlling for economic variability, a person making $150,000 who is black and a person making $150,000 who is white go to the emergency ward? No, go to their primary care physician. And they are given aggressively differential treatment. They are courted racially driven differences of perception of their likelihood to receive medicine or the necessity for it. For instance, black people with a cultural consciousness that they are somehow more immune to pain, more willing to bear it, tougher, are given less aggressive treatment when it comes to, say, heart disease than the white person of the same economic status who goes to his or her doctor and receives more aggressive treatment. We are also told that studies have been done where young black people are seen to be older than they are. So Tamir writes, at 12 years old, a policeman rose up on him in Cleveland, Ohio, and the public health crisis of racial intolerance besieges him, and a policeman shoots him 2 seconds after arriving. More recent studies have been done suggesting that even neonatally, in their youth, young babies who are black have a better chance of survival if they are treated by a black physician. It doesn't mean that white physicians and others are going around thinking, I hate black people, or spewing racial epithets against their vulnerable bodies. It suggests that there is an empathy, an identification, a willingness to be even more aggressive in pursuing pathways of racial and, in this case, physical healing to make certain that those young children, that those babies are appropriately attended to. But not only do we have this crisis of a global pandemic and health inequities that continue to stump the ability of black and brown people to receive equitable health care, where they use the emergency ward as their primary care physician. And by the time you get into emergency wards, you know that disease processes are more advanced. You know that the subjection to their bodies of unknown etiologies, not knowing where the disease came from, its origin, is far more difficult to contend with. But then we have the global virus, the pandemic of racial intolerance. COVID-19, COVID-16-19, marking the year, as Nicole Hannah-Jones reminds us in the 1619 Project of the New York Times Magazine, the year that 20 and some odd Negroes extracted from their resting place in Africa, brought here to America in Jamestown, and against their will, forcible labor imposed on them. And since that time, the issue of race has been deeply and profoundly entrenched in the collective unconscious of American society. And so we are contending with a syndemic, a convergence of the pandemic of race and the pandemic of the virus. George Floyd's death in 2020 of May suggested to us that still to this day, racial intolerance, anti-blackness, police brutality focused on black and brown and vulnerable bodies is still a plague in this country. Hands up, you get shot. Hands down, you get shot. Begging for your life, you get shot. Saying nothing, you get shot. Being aggressive and defending yourself, you get shot. Saying nothing at all and relenting to the powers that be that are exercised with lethal intensity on the sidewalk, and we get shot. Sundry Karens are invading in our existence, intervening on our lives with no good reason. Whether we are at Starbucks trying to get a cup of coffee or go to the bathroom, or at Yale University trying to sleep in the lounge, whether we are in Oakland, California trying to barbecue, what's more un-American than separating Negroes from barbecue? Okay, that's not a good message at a school of health, concerned about the reproduction of good cells and the like, but every now and again when we dip into the barbecue, it is a warrant of irrationality that our lives are subject to the arbitrary whim and caprice of white supremacy manifest at the local level of curiosity about why we are doing what we are doing, and concerned about us to the degree that they're willing to police our bodies. And speaking of policing our bodies, in this pandemic of race and virus, we now add the pandemic of gender oppression. Why in Texas they are deputizing citizens to tell on, to report women who after 6 weeks are seeking an abortion. Sometimes it takes longer than 6 weeks to really understand if you're pregnant or not. And so right-wing conservatives who want the government out of the bedroom of its citizens usually now wants to get inside of the bedrooms of its citizens to dictate to women when and where they can have a baby. The great philosopher Tupac Shakur said, and since a man can't make one, he ain't got no right to tell a woman when and where to have one. Does it take Tupac to tell Mitch McConnell and Josh Hawley and conservatives throughout this country, Supreme Court justices who adjudicate competing claims of rationality and jurisprudential logic, this to support the notion that they will intervene on the bedrooms of grown women who make decisions about their lives, even if they are raped, they have no legal recourse? The same state that has laws against voting that are stern and strict, because we are all in the same boat together. So when I think about health and wellness and framing the foundations of the future, we must fight against racial intolerance. We must fight against anti-brownness. We must fight against anti-blackness. We must fight against anti-feminist and female ideals. And my brothers and sisters, as you come to school this year to study tissues, to study cell biology, to study chemistry, thermodynamics, Maxwellian dynamics, as you are studying Einsteinian light refracted through the prism of time and space, as you are trying to think about latissimus dorsi and pectoralis major and bicuspid and incisor. I'm throwing all the words I can at you. You know what I'm doing. The thing is that you must understand the undergirding truth that you are to be agents of health, physically, morally, spiritually, and mentally. And in a nation, here you are in Tennessee, where citizens are fighting with school boards about mask mandates, where the lethal ignorance of white supremacy has focused itself on the bodies of ordinary citizens. The real religion in this country is not Christianity that they claim. The real democracy is not the American form of government that they claim. The real form of government and religion and philosophy is a vicious whiteness that disregards white brothers and sisters as much as it does other people of color. Martin Luther King Jr. in jail, and they said to him that what you're doing is wrong, and he said, no, it's not, it's right. And finally, they said, Dr. King, segregation is right and desegregation is wrong. As I come to my close, and he said, no, it's not. And then finally he said, how much money do you make? And when they told him, he said, hell, you need to be out here marching with us, because we are all in the same boat. Poor white people who have been duped by Trumpism, poor white people who have marched on the Capitol of the United States of America, January 6, 2021, trying to reject the outcome of a duly sworn election. Your real religion is not the God above. It is the whiteness from within. And we must expel that demon of worshiping at the altar of pigment and privilege, and lift ourselves up to a higher plane where all of us are seen as children of God. And so, my brothers and sisters, as I take my seat, I want to congratulate you for coming to this historic institution. You're going to find people who are going to support you, and you're going to find haters. You're going to find people who want to walk with you to your destination, and you're going to see some who are trying to hurt you at the same time. Like the great philosopher Aubrey Graham says, give that address to your driver, make it your destination instead of a post out of desperation. Yeah, lift yourself up. I had to drop a Drake line in here. You know, yellow Negroes born in October got to stick together. And I don't care what shade you are, light or dark. I don't care what class you come from. I don't care what part of the country you come to. You come to this great institution, historically black, training physicians, training dentists, training healthcare workers who are obsessed with making this a healthier nation. And if you carry that forward, you will be part of a tradition, a glorious one, that has seen the remarkable qualifications that you gain here put to great service in the broader world. God bless you, my brothers and sisters. Have a great year. Study hard, dig deep, even in the midnight hour. But understand, you are an agent of health, an agent of change, and an agent of transformation. God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Dyson, for those remarkable words today.